Most people think rent versus buy is a math problem solved once at 30. According to the National Association of Realtors, the median existing home price hit $417,800 in April 2026, and Freddie Mac put the average 30-year mortgage rate at 6.51% in May 2026. But the real math is not the day you sign. It is what happens to your money over 30 years. This video walks through 5 decades of the same $100,000 one, renting one buying, and the 5 traps that decide who wins cash flow, discipline, location, hidden costs, and retirement risk. Level 1. The cash flow illusion. You are 30 years old with $100,000 saved, a $420,000 listing on one screen, a $200 apartment renewal on another, and the strange pressure of knowing that whatever you choose will look obvious only in hindsight. Renter you signs another lease. You keep the $100,000 liquid, put it into an index portfolio, and promise yourself that every dollar you save by not owning will be invested, not spent. No inspection, no closing table, no lender email asking for another document, no property tax escrow, no roof you suddenly become responsible for. Buyer. You puts down $84,000, spends roughly another $12,500 on closing costs, and receives keys to something that feels permanent: a driveway, a spare bedroom, a small backyard, a place where you can paint the wall without asking permission. But your savings account is now much thinner, and the monthly number is not just the mortgage. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau explains that a total monthly mortgage payment can include principal, interest, mortgage insurance, if applicable, and escrow for homeowners, insurance, and taxes. If the home is in a condo co-op or homeowners association, additional fees may sit outside that number too. So the first trap is not buying, and it is not renting. The first trap is comparing rent to mortgage instead of comparing one full life cost to another. Renter, you sees $200 and feels light. Buyer, you sees ownership and feels responsible. But both of you are looking at incomplete math. You feel free and behind in equal measure. At 30, the renter owns options. The buyer owns a house. The question is, which one compounds better? But 10 years later, the spreadsheet stops agreeing with the story you told yourself. Level 2. The discipline test. 10 years later, the experiment has a scoreboard, and one version of you has been quietly losing on the inside while looking fine on the outside. Renter you now pays about $2,950 a month if rent has risen 3% a year from the original $2,200. That number annoys you every time the renewal email arrives. The landlord does not care that you invested responsibly. The rent still goes up. But the brokerage account tells a different story. If you invested the original $100,000 and you consistently invested, the monthly difference between renting and owning your portfolio could be around $320,000 in this simplified model. That number is not magic. It only exists because you did the boring thing every month. This is the second trap. Renting only looks smart if the difference is actually invested. If you rent and spend the difference on a nicer car, better vacations, furniture, upgrades, and lifestyle inflation, the spreadsheet collapses. Buyer, you has a different kind of scoreboard. The house may now be worth around $590,000 if it appreciated 3.5% a year. Your mortgage balance may have fallen from $336,000 to about $285,000. That gives you roughly $305,000 in home equity. So on paper, the race is close, but the emotional experience is not close. The renter can see and use the portfolio. The buyer can see the equity, but cannot easily spend it without selling, refinancing, or borrowing against the house. And there is another frustration: the mortgage does not pay down in a straight line. In the early years, it can feel like a huge amount of money leaves your account, while the loan balance falls slowly, because a large portion of the payment goes toward interest before principal paydown accelerates later. You are wealthier on paper and tighter in cash at the same time. At 40, the question is no longer rent or buy. It is whether your behavior matched your theory. Then geography enters the spreadsheet, and the math you trusted starts behaving differently. Pause here for a second. The renter versus buyer debate online is usually fake. It assumes identical incomes, identical cities, identical discipline. In reality, the National Association of Realtors and Federal Reserve data both show outcomes that depend on 5 variables. This video already named cash flow, discipline, location, hidden costs, and retirement risk. The choice is not which side is smarter. The choice is which risk you can actually manage for 30 years. Level 3. The zip code reversal. 2 decades in a career offer lands in your inbox, family obligations pull in another direction, and one truth quietly arrives. Renting versus buying was never one national decision. In the baseline model, Renter You now pays almost $4,000 a month in rent, but the portfolio may be around $690,000 because the original savings and monthly investments had 2 decades to compound. Buyer, you has a house that may be worth about $835,000. The mortgage balance may be down to around $187,000, leaving roughly $650,000 in equity. Again, the race looks close. But now, the shape of wealth matters. Renter You receives a job offer in Raleigh, Dallas, Seattle, or Denver. You can move in 60 days. You do not need to stage a house. You do not need a buyer. You do not need to wonder if this is a bad year to sell. Your lease can end and your life can turn. Buyer, you receives the same offer, but the house is no longer just an asset. It is the school district. Your kids know the mortgage rate. You do not want to lose the kitchen renovation. You paid for the neighbors who bring in your trash cans and the aging parent who lives 20 minutes away. This is where the national model breaks. In an expensive coastal market like San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles, or San Jose, the buyer may need a massive down payment and still end up house poor. In that world, a disciplined renter can win because the money not trapped in the house has room to compound. In a more affordable inland market, like Memphis, Cleveland, Indianapolis, or parts of the Houston metro, the mortgage may be much closer to rent. There, the buyer can win because the home builds equity without destroying monthly cash flow. In a fast-growth Sunbelt market, like Austin, Phoenix, Tampa, or a Dallas suburb, timing becomes the story. Buy before a boom, and you may look brilliant. Buy after prices spike, insurance rises, and taxes reset, and the same decision can feel like a trap. You feel mobile and rootless in equal measure. At 50, the same decision can be genius in one zip code and a trap in another. What looks like a finish line at 60 is rarely the end of the story. Level 4, the false finish line. 30 years after the first decision, one version makes a final mortgage payment that feels like victory until the next tax bill arrives. Renter You now pays about $5,300 a month if rent rose 3% a year. There was never a final rent payment, no ceremonial letter, no moment where the landlord says, "You are done now." The rent kept coming year after year because renting gives flexibility, not an ending. But the portfolio may now be around $1.4 million. It is liquid. It can be rebalanced. It can be used for medical costs, helping adult children moving to a cheaper state, or delaying Social Security. Your wealth is visible, flexible, and accessible. Buyer, you has the emotional moment renters never get. The final mortgage payment. The home may now be worth around $118 million. The loan balance is zero. For the first time in 30 years, the mortgage is gone. But then the next bill arrives. Property tax, homeowners insurance, maintenance, maybe HOA dues, maybe a roof, maybe plumbing, maybe the insurance premium that rises just when you thought life would get cheaper. This is the false finish line. The mortgage can end, but housing does not become free. And in the United States, those ongoing ownership costs depend heavily on where you live. Tax Foundation data shows New Jersey had the highest effective tax rate on owner-occupied property in calendar year 2023 at 2.23%, while Hawaii had the lowest at 0.27%. That difference alone can change the retirement math of owning a paid-off home. You feel finished and unfinished in equal measure. At 60, the mortgage can end. Housing never does. 5 years later, the difference between owning and renting becomes the difference between net worth and spendable wealth. Level 5, the spendable wealth test. By retirement, the question is no longer which choice sounded smarter at 30, but which one still works when paychecks slow down. Healthcare costs rise, and every housing decision becomes part of a retirement budget. Renter, you may now have a portfolio near 1.8 million or more in this simplified model, but rent may be around $6, $100 a month. That is the trade. You have liquid wealth, but your housing cost still has a heartbeat. It arrives every month. It does not care that you retired. You sit with a financial advisor. The screen shows Social Security portfolio withdrawals, rent projections, healthcare costs, and tax planning. You have choices. You can move to a cheaper city. You can downsize by changing apartments. You can follow your children move closer to doctors or leave a state that no longer fits your budget. But you also have exposure. If rent keeps rising, your portfolio has to keep absorbing it. If markets fall early in retirement, you may be selling investments while still paying rent. Your wealth is liquid, but your shelter is not locked in. Buyer. You may own a home worth around $1.4 million. Your monthly housing pressure is much lower because the mortgage is gone. You still pay tax, insurance, repairs, and utilities, but the largest payment disappeared at 60. That gives you something a renter may envy: residential stability. But your wealth is trapped differently. If most of your net worth is inside the house, you cannot spend the guest bedroom. You cannot sell half the kitchen. To turn home equity into cash, you usually have to sell, borrow, refinance, or use a home equity product. That is why net worth and spendable wealth are not the same thing. Home ownership is strongly associated with wealth in America, but that does not mean buying is always the right choice in every market. It means a house can act like forced savings, especially for people who would not otherwise invest the difference. You are secure and exposed in different ways. Renter wins if buying was too expensive. Relative to rent, the difference was truly invested, and liquidity or mobility mattered more than roots. Buyer wins if the full cost of ownership was close to rent. The home was held long enough, the city appreciated reasonably, and the house never made you cash. Poor. At 65, retirement does not ask what you own. It asks what your wealth can actually do for you. So what should you actually do? Buy. If the full monthly cost of ownership is close to rent, you plan to stay at least 7 to 10 years, and you can handle a major repair without destroying your emergency fund. Buy if stability matters more than mobility, and if your city's price to rent math is reasonable. Rent and invest. If buying would make you house poor, if your city has a brutal gap between prices and rents, or if your career and family life still need movement. But only call renting a strategy if the difference is truly invested. Otherwise, it is just a lifestyle with no equity at the end. The winner is not always the renter. The winner is not always the buyer. The winner is the person who understands four variables before making the choice: city, timing, cash flow, and discipline. Buying wins when stability compounds. Renting wins when discipline compounds. The mistake is choosing one and pretending the other risk disappeared. Before signing a lease or a mortgage in the next 30 days, do three things. 1. Calculate your total monthly cost of ownership in your specific city. Principal, interest, taxes, insurance, HOA, and a 1% maintenance reserve. Compare it directly to current rent on equivalent space. 2. Multiply the difference by 360 months. That is the real opportunity cost the spreadsheet hides. 3. Ask yourself, honestly, which discipline you have: investing the difference every month or paying a mortgage every month no matter what. The cheaper option is the one you can actually execute for 30 years. If you were 30 again, would you rather carry the risk of rent forever or the risk of owning one expensive address for decades? And more importantly, which version of that risk would you actually be disciplined enough to live with?